This is David Tools. I do thank you for giving me just a minute of your time. For if I have that, well, maybe 5 minutes. If I have that, I think you can get your sense of what is happening today in Chattanooga and Howard County and what might matter. There's good news from Chattanoogan.com and also EastRidgeNewsOnline.com. And it is that the East Ridge Housing and Redevelopment Authority will be retreating from its grandiose 25-page scheme to trap under its authority large swaths of that city, 2,000 properties, and it will not try to redevelop all these areas that include hundreds of homes and residences, but will focus only on the commercial area. And we have the statement from Bridget Raper. She is a lobbyist for several towns in a group. It makes a statement evidently on behalf of the board. I'm not sure quite why it can't make its own statement, but she says, although this group's focus and intent is to identify only commercial blighted properties, i.e. vacant, abandoned, unimproved, or dilapidated, the ERHRA, that's to say the East Ridge Housing and Redevelopment Authority, will not target or attempt to secure the ability to displace residents from their homes. In other words, this group, the agency, will not try to kick out from their own houses residents whose houses somehow don't make up to snuff, up to the standard of these tie-wearing, besuited folks who represent the city on this board. So that appears to be very good news for concerned homeowners in East Ridge. About 22,000 residents are there. There's also a quote that I'm looking at Chattanooga.com from Darwin Branham. He says, "We understand the direction of the city council and certainly," he says, "are going to work to meet the objective of redeveloping the commercial corridor." So again, the emphasis will be away from all these properties in this scorpion-shaped district, but narrowed to only residential areas. Robert Z. Whipple is a man in prison. He is to be found today, this morning. Probably he's already had breakfast on 1045 Horsehead Road in Pikeville, just across the hill, the mountain from us. And he's been a faithful correspondent of mine. So he is a correspondent of our radio station. And yesterday I got a letter from him saying that he's sorry he hasn't written sooner. I've been having a hectic last few days. He says, as you know, went up for parole on the 18th, and I just got back my decision. So he's good enough as my correspondent here, David Toulis, to write me a letter, typed out letter, and he says, and I just got back my decision, immediate release. He says I have to go to a halfway house and have a few other restrictions, but I'm on my way! Exclamation point. I'm nervous and excited. And he says, but it is a good nervous. It will feel strange to be out after 7 years behind bars. Now I have Robert's dad, Robert Z. Whipple, on the phone. Mr. Whipple, can you tell me a little bit about the news, how you got the news from your son? Was it by phone call or by letter?
Actually, he said he went through the parole, and then I was checking it's called FOIL on the TDOC website, and they finally posted on there that he was paroled. So I actually knew about it before he did.
Well, his letter mentions immediate release. What does that mean?
That just means they start through the process to release them, and it can take anywhere from 2 weeks to 2 months, depending on the timing and everything. But they have to go through their the plan for what they'll do when they get out. Like you mentioned in the letter, he has to go to a halfway house. He has a bed in the halfway house that's already set up. There's a TDOC grant that helps pay for that interim housing. He has to get that set up yet. And
how does he do that?
There's several reviews.
Mr. Whipple, how does your son Robert set up halfway house housing by letter? I mean, that seems very cumbersome and awkward. And I mean, it's hard enough just going to a place to look for a place to live, but here he has to do it from behind Bledsoe County Correctional Complex walls. How does he do that?
It's strictly done by letter because he can't call them, obviously. And these are places that are set up to handle this. That's normal. They're very aware of their restrictions on the inmates. So they basically handle it through the mail. I had called the halfway house after I found out and checked to see to make sure he had a bed there. And they went through the process and finalized it, so he has a place to stay. So that part's taken care of.
And say something about Smithville, Tennessee. It's in Central Tennessee. Is it just between Knoxville and Nashville? Is that fair to say? DeKalb County. What do you know about that place?
I think that's correct. He said it's a small town. I'm not familiar with it myself.
You're in Arkansas, is that right, Mr. Whipple? You live in Arkansas?
Right, in Russellville, Arkansas.
Okay. And your son was a resident of Tennessee when he was convicted, and so he was in a Tennessee prison in Bledsoe County here in the Chattanooga area.
Right. He was going to college actually when he started having the issues that got him there. So, but he was at Tennessee Tech, his associate degree. And he was going for his bachelor's degree.
Well, he's been my correspondent for maybe about a year. I found out about him through Sharon Rondeau, Robert Whipple. She is the editor of the Post and Email. And though she resides in Connecticut, is really, I'd say, the press expert on prisons in Tennessee. She has dealt with hundreds of inmates by correspondence and dealt with their families, interviewed families, written about them, dealt with bureaucracy. So I found out about your son from her. And he's been good enough to write me, and he writes extremely well. And what would you say your son? How would you highlight your son's stay in prison? What has been his outstanding trait, or what has he done in your mind that's really the most remarkable? His dad.
Well, he's done several of the jobs he's had. He's really enjoyed when he was at Only Tennessee. He was in the dog training program, and he really loved that. And this is where they would train dogs for handicapped people. And it's done basically. They provide trained dogs free of charge to if people qualify. And he trained probably 3 or 4 dogs when he was in that for a while. And of course, the dogs really help the inmates too. That's they benefit a lot from it. And then he got moved to the woodworking plant, but he started having issues with the staff and felt that his constitutional rights were being violated. So that's when he started digging into more of the legal side of it, and he really has developed a pretty good talent for writing briefs and doing the legal stuff. He's even had one go all the way to the Supreme Court now.
And he also, as I'm trying to remember now from past letters to me, Mr. Whipple, he also has given a lot of time to other inmates, and that always has to be, when you do legal work for other people, it has to be pro bono, which is to say free, because otherwise you face a state statute that's called UPL, Unlicensed Practice of Law, in which if you're paid to do some service in the legal realm, you can be charged with that criminal act. So he's had to do all this charitable pro bono legal work for other inmates. What do you know about that?
Yes, he's helped a lot of inmates. That one case I was just mentioning, the one that went to the Supreme Court, that was actually on another inmate's case. And the way if I understand the stipulation correctly, he can do a lot of the write-ups and get the briefs ready, but he can't sign them. The other inmate has to do that. And so he really doesn't appear on the legal documents. He can get them ready for them, and then it's up to them to read through them, approve them, and execute them, whatever has to be done. But he enjoys that and likes helping the other inmates. And he's, like I said, he's had several appeals go through the circuit court, and he's won them, almost 100% flat cold. And the one went to the Supreme Court, U.S. Supreme Court, and if I understood that one correctly, that one was one also.
What was the issue, Mr. Whipple? What was the issue in that case?
I'm not real sure. I think it had to do with the where they were not providing medication to the inmates.
And your son had that
very wrong.
And well, your son argued that, and he had done all the research in Tennessee regarding his own case because he was denied for a long time the proper shoe. He has a diabetes problem, and the shoes that he can't wear shoes, and which means he can't go outside. He was being denied that 1 hour of open air activity because he couldn't have any shoes on, didn't have any shoes on that fitted. And can you just fill me, just briefly remind me what happened in that conflict? Because finally, Mr. Whipple Sr., he did get some shoes that fitted him. Is that right?
Yeah, basically the prison doctor authorized prescription shoes for him. He has a fairly wide foot and much wider than what the TDOC normally offers. So the doctor, because of the diabetes, wrote up a prescription to have the correct size shoes provided. So, because of and it was complicated because of the diabetes. And basically, one of the clerks within the system denied it and canceled it, even though she's not a doctor, she's not even a nurse. And so that kind of started the rhubarb. It ended up, basically, I had to buy him a pair of shoes because the state refused to do it, even though legally and from a medical standpoint, that was the prescription from their own doctor. So the problems with the medical side within the TDOC is quite extensive. His first case that he was fighting over actually was because he was denied Prilosec. He has an extreme case of GERD, and when you're in that mode, you can cough up blood. You can't sleep, and all, a lot of consequences. And
well, let's just hold on. So that GERD is a gastrointestinal reflux disease. Is that right?
That's correct.
Yes. Sir.
The bad side of it, if it's not treated and properly handled, the cells in the esophagus can change, and in the worst case, it goes to cancer, and it's like 95% fatal. There's really not much they can do if it actually goes to the esophageal, I think they call it cancer.
Esophageal, yes, sir.
What they were doing to not only Robert, but probably 4,000 or 5,000 other inmates by withholding the Prilosec, they're, that's what happens when you don't treat the GERD properly. It's going to get worse, and you can get into cancer, and then you're like a death sentence.
Right. This is David Toulis. We're talking with Robert Z. Whipple, the father of the noted pro se litigant, Robert Z. Whipple in Bledsoe County. He is at 1045 Horsehead Road. There's a slave camp there, a state slave camp, also called a prison. In Tennessee, we have slavery, only we don't have private chattel slavery as in the days of the Confederacy. There is state slavery, and the state is a rough slave master. Let me ask you, Mr. Whipple Sr., has your son suffered spiritually there, or has he grown and matured maybe as a Christian in his oppression in that purposeless hellhole of a prison?
He's been very involved with the church since he's been in, and very much a believer. And I think he goes to services at least twice a week. And of course, his real problem was he got hooked on drugs, and that's really closely associated with and part of your religious things, the working with people with drug problems. So he's very much involved in that aspect of, and I think it's improved. It's made him mature and helped him a lot from a lot of aspects.
So he's leaving prison not schooled in crime, as many men do leave prison, not better educated in the means of wrong and in self-justifying actions. He's left with a sense of charity for others, you're suggesting, and a love for God that he didn't know when he went in.
Yeah, I think that's a good summary, yeah.
Well, listen, Robert Whipple, thank you so much for chatting with me and my listener here at 92.7 FM and 95.3. FM HD4. We're a digital station, Mr. Whipple, and I'm not sure our signal goes out to Smithville, Tennessee, where your son will be at the halfway house. But we do thank you for your time, and I guess congratulate your family, Mr. Whipple, on his pending parole.
Well, thank you.
Yes, sir. This is David Toulis, and we argue on our show that you should love your neighbor by local. And the lococentric theme, if you will, the lococentric maxims are very simple too. They don't take a lot of ink to get them out. Near is better than far, small than big, and simple than complex. And personal is better than corporate, and physical is better than abstract. We're brought to you by yournews.com. That's yournews.com. If you're in the Chattanooga area, our part of that platform will pop up, and all of our local material is in the local section. So that's either at the bottom of the main page, or you can go over to the right and select the local page, where everything that I post will be there. And I'm the editor, David Toulis, of NoogaRadio, NoogaRadio.com, the website for the man who matters. And yes, that's right. Not popular and not well trafficked, and that is because not a lot of people really matter. And the people who don't really matter, I hope we're going to vote today. And sorry, that was not very kind. You should go to vote today, and you do matter. Okay. Let me just say, let me retract. I retract that. But voting is important for a lot of people, and certainly for office seekers, it's vital. We're brought to you by yournews.com, and the number is 800-8949, 800-889-449. And the news again from East Ridge is that the East Ridge Housing and Redevelopment Authority, created last year by Mayor Brent Lambert and others in city government, is making a statement today available at East Ridge News Online with Dick Cook. That's East Ridge News Online .com, and I'm looking here at a version of that story at John Wilson's website. That's Chattanooga.com. And there's a lady described as a lobbyist. Her name is Bridget Raper, and she represents towns. And she says that the authority has heard the strong directive from the East Ridge City Council to scale back the proposed boundary map and to redraft the plan to concentrate now on commercial properties and eliminate any reference to the taking of houses in the city. So there's I would say probably a sigh of relief from people who had been feeling put upon, been feeling that the distant rumble of a bus or a truck is actually the bulldozer coming up the street to plow down the garden and the old house. But that's not in view now with the statement. And there's also a quote from Darwin Branham, the head of the authority, who makes a very similar comment. He says, "We understand the direction of the city council and certainly are going to work to meet the objective of redeveloping the commercial corridor." So the squashed scorpion map in red that authority published is now going to be redrawn, and there'll be much less red and probably not much of a tail on that scorpion with all the work of redevelopment in commercial areas. But even there, you have a problem. Even there, if you have a piece of commercial property that's undeveloped or dilapidated, there's a reason for it. The reason that property is not developed is, again, because of intervention. If you have a free market, if you have a zoning-free local economy, which I think we should dream for, we should want a zoning-free local economy, then I would like to suggest you're going to have all commercial property used commercially and nothing left unhoed, okay, nothing left unfurrowed, unseeded, unplanted. And the reason that these buildings are left empty is because that's the rational thing to do. The rational thing to do for the property owner is just to leave it empty. He can't redesign it, redevelop it, he can't raise it and build on it. He doesn't have capital for that, can't obtain capital, even though we are in a credit boom that's just about to slip into the reverse. And he has taxes, he has zoning problems, he has all kinds of costs associated with redevelopment that are a barrier to entry, right? He has a barrier to entry into his own Kingwood Pharmacy building and the other increasingly ramshackle retail spaces in the western part of that city. And because we have intervention, because we don't have a free market, we have these dead areas that are the authority is correct, are discouraging of development, that are discouraging of capital, discouraging of the arrival of risk-taking in the commercial area in that city. Zoning and planning agencies are bad in many ways, and we can't see them. Right? We can't see them. In fact, we think that, well, we have a new apartment complex going up here, and wow, nice office complex going up there, and well, over here, over by H.H. Gregg, we've got more retail space going up that can be left empty in very fine fashion as well. Well, these are forms of malinvestment. The Kingwood Pharmacy left empty is the form of malinvestment that is imposed upon the marketplace because of these barriers to entry, barriers to the proper use. The proper use is defined by whom as proper. That's right, the marketplace. And who is the marketplace? That's right. The marketplace is everybody, is the collective will of all the people, all those who have money to invest, all those involved in businesses, trades, retail sales, production, light manufacturing, heavy manufacturing, all the people in the economy. They allocate quietly without civil supervision, right? Without the civil government involving itself. They decide how Kingwood Pharmacy or any other Lucan property there in East Ridge is going to be redeveloped. But because we have impositions from the outside, we have these high-minded, civic-minded, sort of pompous-ass claims by officials, most of whom are just appointed, as to how things should look and how things should go. We have people who can't even get into their own building effectively. They can't get into their building profitably, and so they have to let it lie as a dead zone. That's the only rational thing to do. When you see empty buildings in East Ridge, it's not irrational. Okay, let me just say that again. It's not irrational. It is rational. It has to be that way, and it has to be that way because the people of East Ridge and the people of Hamilton County reject the market. They reject it. And there are all kinds of reasons they reject it. And the main one, as we saw with those wealthy people who went to the city council last week and got an ordinance passed on their behalf about that golf course. What they have and what they want is a guarantee of valuation. That's what they want. If you want the government to guarantee the valuation of your property value in the marketplace, because you want the government to prevent someone from building condos next to your fine private house, well, then you're going to have to accept elsewhere in your town that you have these vacated and vacant and maybe somewhat dilapidated areas. You're just going to have to accept it because that's the fruit of your desire to be protected, right? Those wrecked areas, those down zones, those brownfield type zones in Chattanooga and East Ridge and elsewhere, they are the fruit of your own wish. They come from you, my listener. If you want to have the government secure the value of your property here in Hamilton County, then you have to accept these dead zones. And you have to accept that the owners of those properties are doing the rational thing by keeping absolute minimum expenses, and they can't develop it. They just can't develop. They don't have the financial muscle to lift their hand to the door, go in and redevelop. They can't do that. Why? Well, there's headwinds, or there's kind of heavy gravity where they just can't walk from the edge of the lot to the front door to go in because the gravity is suddenly so heavy in that lot. Why is that heavy? Because of intervention, government intervention, zoning intervention, tax intervention, all for the public good, all for your good. You, my listeners, don't you feel good about that? Don't you feel great about that? David Toulis.